Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It is Carlos Alcaraz versus Stefanos Tsitsipas in a quarterfinal that everyone wanted, right? Well, it is a quarterfinal that I wanted anyway. In this section, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this one plays out. It is 5-love or 5-0 in favor of Carlos Alcaraz in the head-to-head, but I don't think it's going to be that clear cut, and I'll explain why in this video. Before we get into it, though, remember to hit that like button. Do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Honestly, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing our videos, it really does help us out. We're growing, so appreciate everyone's support. On top of that, shout out to our members on YouTube for contributing towards the channel. Again, it really does help us out, so we appreciate it so much, and you guys are all legends. We're going to break this down into a few sections of this video. So first of all, I'm going to talk about route to the quarterfinals, so who they've played, how they've looked, and just talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the head-to-head, so how the matches played out. We know it's 5-0 in favor of Alcaraz, but what matches were on clay, which were not? Have they played at Roland Garros before? So what right they have. We'll get into that. Then tactically and technically, I'll break it down. So mainly looking at how the match might play out, how both players are playing right now, and how that might translate into what we see. And ultimately, I'll give you guys my prediction. So let's talk about Tsitsipas's route to the quarterfinals so far. He had a tough first round in Marton Fucsovics, but won in straight sets. So Fucsovics is not the type of player you want to face in the first round of any tournament. Definitely a solid competitor, but Tsitsipas navigated that pretty well. Then faced Altmaier, who's been playing some really good tennis and took a set off Tsitsipas, massive hitting from the German. And of course, Altmaier was the one, if I'm not mistaken, who beat Sinner last year at Roland Garros. Then we had Tsitsipas and Zhang. And look, Tsitsipas came through that fine in straight sets and was pretty much plain sailing. But his round of 16 or fourth round match against Matteo Arnaldi is the one to really look at, because he dropped the first set. Arnaldi was a set and a break up. He was playing some phenomenal tennis. He's quick, just like Alcaraz around the court. He was hitting really big, a very heavy, big ball, exactly like how Alcaraz does. And it was aggressive tennis, was coming to the net a lot. And there are some similarities you could definitely make between how Arnaldi was playing for that set and a half or set and a bit and Alcaraz's general game style. So, definitely something to bear in mind. And I was thinking that as I was watching it, but Tsitsipas did turn it around nicely. He kind of weathered that storm and he managed to then take control himself in the middle of the second set. And then it was pretty much plain sailing after a tiebreaker in the second set. The third and fourth sets, he dominated, got early breaks, looked very good with the serve and forehand, which is, of course, his lethal combination. He's got one of the best serve and forehand combos, I think, on tour. Then we had Alcaraz. Now, Alcaraz had and has had a pretty good run as well. Not super hard. JJ Wolf, who is a solid American, isn't great on clay. If it was on hard court, I would have said fine. It's not. One in straight sets. And then against De Jong came out fighting, took a set off Alcaraz. Alcaraz in the end, though, managed to win in 4 sets. And again, question marks over, okay, how's the arm looking? It's still strapped up, or he's got a Chubby grip on it. He wasn't and hasn't, in my opinion, been at his best. And it's hard to play at your best consistently, but I still think he's not 100% physically right. And look, watching his match recently, he beat Korda in straight sets, looked good for the last set and a half against Korda. Against Felix again for the last set and a half, it looked really good against Felix as well, both beaten in straight sets. But I do wonder about physically how he's going to hold up if it gets very physical this match. But we'll talk about that in a second. The head-to-head. So the head-to-head is 5-0 in favor of Alcaraz. Now, the last 3 matches have been on clay between the two players, including last year's Roland Garros quarterfinal, where Alcaraz won in straight sets, and he won the last 2 matches they played on clay and in their head-to-head in straight sets. So both in 2023, and pretty comfortable. So the matchup just hasn't been good for Tsitsipas historically. The other meeting on clay was in 2022, where Alcaraz won in 3 sets in a really explosive match in Barcelona. But again, it was pretty comfortable despite Steph taking that second set. Alcaraz dominated the deciding set 6-2. So, yeah, not a lot to say really in the head-to-head apart from Alcaraz has dominated it, in honesty. Why has he dominated it is really the question, right? Because I think we need to talk about that and then see, okay, well, is there, in my opinion anyway, is there a reason why Alcaraz has dominated it? And yes, of course there is, and it's to do with his style. Alcaraz takes the ball generally, he can take the ball very early and rush opponents, and Steph doesn't like, he needs a bit of time with the ball, which is why clay, in a sense, tends to be his best surface, you'd say. He has more time to tee up the backhand, he can run around it as well and dictate with the forehand. But even on clay, Alcaraz can be aggressive and step into the court. And not just step in, but take the ball early. And Steph can be slightly rushed still as well. I think the other thing is that Alcaraz in the past has picked apart Steph's backhand. Now, whether that's hitting kind of heavier balls cross court towards that backhand side, whether it's backhand, he might hit the backhand kind of high topspin lob backhand, which, we've seen him hit. Djokovic can hit that too, or a more heavy into out forehand, which again, we know Alcaraz can do. He can also go flat and quick into that backhand side and rush Tsitsipas, or he can go with the higher topspin and get Tsitsipas above shoulder height, which is not a comfortable place to be hitting your backhand in terms of a contact point. So I think Alcaraz has managed to kind of cause trouble there, especially with the kick serve as well, which Alcaraz loves the kick serve, right? And especially to the backhand side of Tsitsipas, which I can imagine he will be doing the same in this match. He'll be trying to exploit that perceived weakness of Steph. But yeah, he's just pushed him back with heavy hitting in the past and hurt him with a drop shot. So he's pushed him out wide or back with heavy hitting and then killed him with a drop shot, really. And he's also taken away the net because, he's taken time away at the net by rushing to the pass, coming forward. When Steph stood really far behind the baseline on return, Alcaraz would sneak in as well and finish off points at the net occasionally, which, on clay, you might think, oh, that's a bit crazy to serve and volley, but it's actually not. If you hit a good kick serve and you drag out your opponent, a lot of players utilize it nowadays, and it's good to see. Or they'll finish off the point at the right moment as the point plays out, right, and materializes. But yeah, I mean, Carlos Alcaraz limits, I think, Steph's ability to run around the backhand and hit his favorite in-twin or into-out forehands, which we know can be so damaging. And that definitely is an issue for Steph and the Greek. It also he can make him look a bit awkward. He can make him look a bit awkward, Alcaraz, in moments trying to hit those two forehands, because when he's a bit rushed, Steph sometimes will chance it and try and run around the backhand. And he then he's very open in his stance, very, very open, but also just awkward and off balance sometimes when hitting that forehand. And I've seen it against Alcaraz in the past where Steph's looked a bit awkward on that forehand. And that's an issue, right? Because Steph's forehand is his weapon on top of his serve, you could say. But what I will say is the Steph that faced Alcaraz last year, I think, is a different Stefanos Tsitsipas that will face him this year. Now, I know Steph made the Australian Open final last year. I get it. But after that, it was, look, I know he struggled with back injury, and maybe it was a shoulder one. But he clearly had some niggles, but not just that. He lost form. He did. Now, the start of this year wasn't amazing for him. It really wasn't. But during the clay court swing, he's looked good. He has looked good. He's won Monte Carlo, his third title there. He's also made the final of Barcelona. He's made was a quarterfinals at Rome, lost to Jarry. Jarry was playing some inspired tennis. Okay, fine. But he's looked good generally. His form's been good. And that match against Arnaldi, I think, did worry me a little bit. But then I thought, okay, Alcaraz is a better player than Arnaldi. Well, let's be fair. But like Arnaldi, he does go through peaks and troughs. So not as extreme as Matteo Arnaldi, but he does. And I think Steph will get chances to attack Alcaraz, dictate. And I still don't think Alcaraz is 100%. I really don't. Whereas I think Steph is probably towards his top level at the moment in terms of the way he's playing. I think Alcaraz looks solid, but I don't think he's at his best. And there's still some questions over the strapped arm or the tubey gripped arm, whatever you want to call it. It's clearly there's something, not 100% right there. But a few of the forehands he was hitting against Felix didn't look like the arm was an issue at all, to be honest. So let's see. If he's at 100%, I think Alcaraz wins. And I'm not going to give you loads of scenarios where I think, okay, if this happens, this person will win. If this happens, this person will win. I'll give you a proper prediction at the end, but I do think Steph has a good chance of being able to start to close the gap in the head-to-head and finally get a win over Carlos, just because of the level he's playing. Now, the serve is going to be key for Steph. He needs to hit his spots. That's just a given. He needs to make a lot of first serves. Alcaraz returning generally is quite good, but it can be a bit wayward at times. Sometimes he can go for too much. Even sometimes he can look a little bit rushed. He can, in my opinion, look a little bit awkward on return, Alcaraz. So something to bear in mind, I think, when looking at this. And I think Steph's serve, he's got a great kick serve, no doubt, but he's able to use angles, also come forward to the net, finish off at the net serve and volley. He can also dictate well with the forehand, which is key, right? And that's something that's going to be really important. Can he find the forehand in that third shot? And there was a stat, I think it was on, I don't know whether it was for the Australian Open potentially, where they had hunting for the forehand or how many, what percentage of points on their serve have they been able to hit a third shot forehand? A third shot would be, of course, your serve, then the return. So it's your +1, right? Your +1. Now for Steph, he's always looking for that. Now on clay, he has more of a chance of hitting it because of the slower surface, and that's a positive. But what it does also mean, because of the slower surface, is that he's probably not going to win as many free points. But that's fine, as long as he does enough on his forehand. He needs to be brave, Steph. He cannot, especially on the approaches, if he's going to come to the net, he cannot go and kind of half-ass it. A bit of a crude term, but honestly, he cannot have half measures, let's say, when it comes to hitting his approach shot. Now, I'm not trying to say he has to hit a winner because it's an approach shot, right? But he needs to pick a side, hit with depth, hit through the ball, right? And then come forward to the net. If he gets passed by an incredible, sliding backhand from Alcaraz, then fine. You just put your hands up and you say, fine, it's too good. And that probably will happen on occasion. But at least he's been decisive, right? At least he's been decisive. And more often than not, he should win that point. Because his forehand is one of the best on tour. The big issue, of course, is the ad court exchange. Now, Steph is going to have to try and hide his backhand as much as possible. The backhand on clay is not as bad, but it's still, against Alcaraz, it can be a liability for the most part. So either he's going to have to be aggressive on the backhand side and go cross court and then try and change direction to go line to get into a forehand exchange where Steph's more comfortable. Or could he mix it up and go slice and try and give Alcaraz little pace? Maybe. On clay, variation is a big part of the game. Of course, the slice isn't quite as potent because of the higher bouncing surface, so it can sit up. So if he's going to slice, he needs to be clever with it. Is he going to hit a short angle cross court? Is he going to mix it up with a drop shot? Steph's drop shot's underrated. Is he going to go deep cross court, even go down the line to try and get an Alcaraz forehand? Right? So he needs to think about how he utilizes it, make sure it's varied. And the biggest thing for me is trying to dictate in the points. Try and make sure he's on the front foot, because if he's defending against Alcaraz, it's going to be a long day. or a short day if Alcaraz beats him quickly, because on the defense against Alcaraz, it's not the best thing when it comes to this matchup, in honesty. For Alcaraz, look, he knows how to beat him. He knows what to do. The question is, can he execute it and execute it to the top level that we know and expect of him? And he very look, maybe this matchup is just too bad for Steph. It doesn't matter if Alcaraz is at 60%, 70%, and Steph's at 100%. It's just still too hard for Steph to win. Maybe that's the case in terms of the matchup. You know, in boxing they say styles make fights. Maybe that's the case here for this tennis matchup. But I just think that normally it would be, in my opinion, 75-80% Alcaraz in terms of probability to win. I think in this matchup, it's more like 60-40 or 65-35 Alcaraz. And I still think it's in favor of Alcaraz in terms of a probability to win. But I do fancy Steph. My prediction is that Steph will get the win. It might be 5 sets. It could be 4 sets. I would be surprised if it's straight sets. That's for sure. I think Alcaraz will take at least a set. That's not me sitting here saying that it's a definite. Look, it's a pretty left field pick, but Steph was not only my pick to beat Alcaraz, but to go on and win the title. I'm going to stick to my guns. From what I've seen, he's still playing a really high level. Alcaraz is probably playing better than I expected. He's still not playing incredibly well in terms of his own ability, but he's playing well enough to just brush past people. Now, Steph shouldn't be the same despite the head-to-head, but let's see. I just think Tsitsipas will need to play a really good match, and I think he's capable of doing that with the form he's in. He also needs to return well, because Alcaraz on serve can be, in my opinion anyway, I think he can be a little bit fragile on serve. There's chances there to break Alcaraz on serve. Sometimes he goes through periods where he might hit double fault, or he's not quite finding his first serve, and his kick serve is not bad on second serve. But for Steph, he should know it's going to come to my backhand, try and run around it, or just drive through the backhand. And if he misses a few, fine. But I think he needs to go for it. Of course, at times he'll need to be a bit more smart and make sure that he's making that return. But like Steph, Alcaraz will hunt for that forehand, right, on that +1 shot. And the problem is Alcaraz will go for it big time and he'll hurt Steph. So Steph needs to get into the rally or needs to try and be on the front foot in the rally straight away to get Alcaraz on the defense, because even on the defense, Alcaraz is incredibly good, right? So then what does Steph do? I think occasionally you have to go behind Alcaraz, be smart in that sense. He'll need to really dig into his tennis IQ when he faces Alcaraz, no doubt. My prediction is Stefanos Tsitsipas. I'm going to go in 4 sets. I just think that the level he's playing at the moment is good enough to beat Alcaraz at this level. Let's see, though. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. I know a lot of you will disagree. I know a lot of you in the draw preview and prediction video disagreed and couldn't believe that I picked Steph over Alcaraz. I get it. But I'd be surprised if Alcaraz, just never loses to Steph in his career. And I know it's still early doors, and in Alcaraz's career, and the head-to-head is only 5-0. But, I say only 5-0. It's pretty substantial. But I do think this could be a turning point for Tsitsipas. So let's see. And if he wins this, imagine the confidence he takes going into the rest of the tournament. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it. Hit that like button. Do subscribe if you're new, and do a rating review if you're listening on a podcast platform. We'll see you guys very, very soon.